welcome, everyone, for part two of my 200th or 201st LinkedIn Live. I'm not going anywhere actually, but I've just decided to kind of take a little bit of a level set and do less events and focus on other people's events. And looking forward to a great conversation today with Linda Brubaker, a fellow VIP from Brenda Miller's group. Looking forward to the chat. And Christine Dykman, of course, always from New Jersey, and Jack Kelly, who's a recruiter. And I definitely want to get his perspective a little today, because we've had many conversations about the challenges that he has working with hiring managers and the challenges he has working with job seekers. So I think one of the things I actually wanted to start with, there were two things I wanted to kind of start as a conversation. One is the whole non-compete thing, which has just been coming out now. And I'd be curious to know, even from your perspective, Jack, and everyone else, how you think that's going to impact people applying for jobs in terms of a non-compete. I mean, it used to be you couldn't work for another company within a certain amount of time. So, I mean, I'll throw this out to the group. If there's anything specific that you wanted to chat about along those lines, or anything else, actually.
So with the non-compete, I'm kind of glad that the FTC brought it up, because over the last, 25 come up as a big problem where you'd have a candidate and they want to move and go from X company to Y company. But then they'll say, wait, Jack, I got to check my contract because I might have a non-compete in there. And that's so messed up, because okay, so you can't go to a better opportunity and find a better job, more money, more growth, better boss, because you have this stipulation in there. And then you would always have this back and forth where the candidate will have to go, just picture this. They'll have to go back to their boss or HR and say, hey, can I take a look at this non-compete? And now you're blowing up your spot, so they know you're looking. And it's just a really uncomfortable, awkward, to me, inappropriate way of doing business. And it's restricting trade.
On the head with that, Jack. I don't think that people understand the impact of a non-compete agreement. They say, oh, well, it's no big deal. You just sign blah, blah, blah. But when you are in job search and it's like, well, I have to go back to my boss and make sure I'm not violating the non-compete, then it kind of ruins everything that you had planned going forward. And I totally agree with what you're saying there.
It's a mess. In fact, one of the things that I'm advising people now is that even though this new rule doesn't go into effect for several days, if you are currently working but thinking about looking, I'm advising people to go ahead and ask their current bosses now. Tell them that, do it as a basis of the FTC just announced it. So I'm really curious, what does my non-compete say?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Everyone's talking about it. So it's not like you're bringing a big red flag over your head by asking that question. You got it, Linda. Mm-hmm.
And they have these other things too. I don't know if you've noticed this. Back in the day with the tech sector, they would have these, it wouldn't be non-competes, but they would have this covert tacit agreement among, Apple, Adobe, and all these other shops to say, hey, we won't poach from you, don't poach from me. So in a way, that was a non-compete, but not in writing, but it was just like in secret that was happening. Eventually, the Department of Justice sued and said, you can't do this.
Right.
So they're always trying to do it's unfair for the employees. They usually get the shaft.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
So one thing I just posted about today, and I'd love to get a perspective from everyone else. I posted about a job on Netflix, and Netflix had a job, and the salary range was $100,000 to $700,000. That was the salary range. Now I actually went into the job specs, and I'm going to try to glean a little bit about what I think they may have been thinking about. Yes, there's stock options. Yes, there's opportunity for different things, but there's a difference between a range on a salary and a base salary, and there's a certain percentage range it should be. I mean, maybe it's within 10 or 15 or 20%. So I would ask you, Jack, first right off the bat, like when you're working with a company and they give you a job with a salary and a salary range, do you have a recommendation for a percentage range or a dollar range based on the job specs, or is that something that you have to take your lead from the company for?
What I would do, just as being the intermediary as a recruiter, to try to nail down with the company, all right, what's the real deal? All right, it's going from, let's just make 100 to 200,000. That's just so huge. Come on. We have to have, is it closer to 200? Is it closer to 100? And and it's an uncomfortable conversation to have because, they're the ones who are paying my bills if I make a placement. So I'm, arguing with the folks who would potentially pay me. But if you don't bring it up, it could be really awkward because then you get to spin your wheels and nothing will happen. And there's this anchoring effect too, so that if you have that higher number, most people will gravitate to that high number. They'll say, "Oh, I should get that $900,000. I should get that 800,000, even if they don't deserve it." And then if they don't get that number, they're going to feel cheated and angry and feel they were ripped off. Like, why didn't I get that? I should deserve it. And it makes the whole process uncomfortable.
You're absolutely right. One of the questions that I have people ask is, or when I was in that executive recruiting role, okay, here's your range. Now, what's your budget? Because the budget and the range are two entirely different things. And we know that the budget, what they're really hoping to pay, is closer to what somebody's actually going to get paid. And that seems to make more sense.
Yeah, I think the budget, like whenever they say the budget, it's a canard. It's like, oh, the budget. We got to look at the budget. We don't have the budget. Come on, you don't have a budget. You have to have you have a certain amount of money to spend. Like you're just doing this willy nilly, and like, oh yeah, we don't have the budget. It's like they're using it as an excuse.
Yeah,
it's simple as that. They, a lot of times there is the budget, or maybe they don't even have a budget, and a lot of times they're just feeling out how much can we get this person for, especially in this market now. For white collar professionals, mid to senior level, they don't want to hire you. They don't want, this might sound crazy, but like they're putting out these job orders, they're putting out these job postings, but they really don't want to hire. They're thinking about AI, and AI could do a job better than a human being. So we're just going to wait it out and see what's going to happen. And we're just going to slow walk the process. We're going to screw over the job seekers because we don't care about them. And we're going to just wait and see if we can get someone cheaper. Or maybe we're going to move that job offshore to somewhere else.
Are you seeing a lot of that, Jack?
Oh, yeah. This is where it's going. It's really scary. It's really scary. If you look at the Department of Labor, the jobs report every month, the vast amount of jobs that are on there are part-time jobs or people holding two part-time jobs. Yeah. You have people who are basically gig workers, contract workers, and nothing wrong with that. But that's not usually what people think when you see the jobs report. They're thinking of accountants and lawyers and what have you. You don't see them. The biggest number is in the government, and then the second biggest is healthcare, but for all the immigrants and illegal immigrants coming in here. So for white collar professionals, very few jobs, very few. And what's frustrating is the media doesn't report on that.
The other thing that's frustrating to me is when people look at the unemployment numbers. I'm sorry, Christine, and that people don't understand that the unemployment numbers don't reflect the number of people who are actually unemployed. It only reflects those people who are actually getting unemployment compensation. So the unemployment numbers are actually so much higher, and nobody reports on that. Nobody seems to understand that.
So Claire, I want to introduce
Claire. I don't mean to interrupt. Could you elaborate on that? Because I think that is so insightful, Linda.
Me too. Linda, go.
Yeah, can you share that? Because that's no one's really talking about that either, and it's a big deal.
Well, think about it. A number of us work with people who are unemployed. And when you ask them whether or not they're getting unemployment compensation, and they've run out of their funds, or they were a gig worker and they're not eligible, they don't count in those numbers, because the only way those numbers can be generated is by looking at the number of people who are actually getting compensation.
I will say somebody that used to work at the DOL.
You're the right person. Oh yeah, you're the person.
That is so true, Linda. Yep.
So Claire, I wanted to introduce you to the conversation. Claire, Virginia, Franco, and I, we do a thing, Lions and Tigers and Resumes, every month. Claire, I don't know if you've never met Jack Kelly. He's an executive recruiter, and he actually can speak to some of the things that we're talking about. I don't know. I think you know Christine and know Linda. So I wanted Jack to be here because one of the things we talked about was the unrealistic salary ranges. We talked about also now the idea of the non-compete. So Claire, feel free to interject anytime you want. This is just a free-form discussion we're having today.
Awesome. Well, and I hope you know I came because all of you are here. And then I get to be seen with the likes of you guys. And so I'm so honored. Thank you for having me. You guys are...
I thought it was just me.
Right? I mean, look at this panel. So I resonate with a lot of what you're sharing, particularly with gig roles. And what's interesting, having been in touching the medical sales and pharmaceutical sales business for as long as I have, since the 90s, that there has been a huge shift all over the market, but certainly in healthcare for fractional leadership roles. And what's interesting is whenever I work with a new client, and for those who don't know who I am at Traction Resume, we primarily do personal branding resumes and LinkedIn profiles for people in medical sales. And one of the questions that we would be able to field right up front for all of our clients was, well, what can I expect to make as a VP of this industry, as a director of this industry, as an area sales or zone manager of this particular section? And today, those things vary much more than they ever did. And in large part to exactly what you were saying, Jack, is that a lot of companies are putting these wide, vast salary ranges and really casting a wide net. And then when it comes to actually having that conversation, it's almost as if they're trying to create the role when the person is in the interview seat and they're trying to see, well, what can I do with this person in terms of a role that maybe I can also couple with AI or a fractional situation or on a contract basis. So we're seeing a ton of that in healthcare, which opens up a lot of opportunities for people who are already wired and comfortable with working in a fractional way or on contract basis. But that's a very small percentage, in my opinion. And it typically really just applies to those who've been in the industry for 20 plus years. They've had a couple of exits in healthcare. They're already close to the C-suite or moving in that direction. And it leaves a lot of other people in the dust when they're consolidating management in these white collar roles. So I'm here with popcorn as well. We have now started positioning people very much in a way of traditional sales and marketing. So creating marketing pieces about each individual, because now more than ever in an industry that was already volatile and no stranger to big, ups and downs and roller coasters and hiring and companies acquiring and merging and all that jazz. Now it's more competitive than ever because they can pay somebody on a fractional basis versus hiring them on full time. So it's the Wild West out there for sure in healthcare too.
Claire,
And
when you
it's
say
not just healthcare.
when you say
Yeah,
fractional, are these usually senior level professionals that are working
Yes.
instead of regular base salary and benefits or that? It's just per per whatever the contract is. Is that how it works?
Yes. And in fact, what's interesting is that particularly when it comes to a company that's a new tech or it's a new health offering, a new startup, for example, or maybe even just a new product and specialty, the leaders at the company may not exactly know what they need. They just know we're underwater, our hair's on fire, and someone's got to come in here with a plan. And so I do mean that those fractional roles tend to be C-suite, CSO, chief revenue officer, chief people officer even. And those are great roles for people who are set up in that way. But a lot of people aren't exactly sure even how to capture, organize, promote themselves for those kinds of things. And then we're seeing a lot of, here's a 3-day-a-week role. Right. So that works to a degree if it suits your budget and your family's budget, or you might need to go out and take on 2 fractional roles to fill all the needs that you have, and certainly your financial needs as well. So it's interesting because it's also sort of requiring this next level of marketing of people who want to play in that space so they can get comfortable with it. They're flexible enough to do multiple roles like that. But then how do you manage it? So it's been really interesting. And I'd say that we've seen a huge uptick in fractional roles as of last summer.
See, a lot of it is also, it used to be, you might bring someone on board for 3 months. And after 3 months, you'd say, you know what, we don't have a budget, so we're going to let you go. Or it might be 3 to maybe 6 months. So this is kind of a pivot from that. Instead of worrying after 3 months you're gone, going in, that's how long the role is, and then you go and do other things at the same time. It's just it's a slightly different terminology, but it's a mindset thing. So
truly
right? I mean,
Yeah.
Hold you back.
Yeah, it's
Seeing that
Christine,
as
it's
well in
perfect
other
timing.
industries, Jack and Linda, not just in medical sales, but whether it is IT or anywhere else.
I've seen it in IT. I've seen it in marketing.
Okay.
I've seen it in social media. I've seen it even on the admin side, on the accounting side, I'm seeing fractional roles.
Okay.
So
Wow.
almost every role that I've seen that I've been working with people on has had a fractional component.
Christine and Claire, do you think the growth in fractional jobs is showing fractures in the job market that otherwise they would be full-time permanent roles, but because they want to cut costs and they're not sure about what the economy is going to be like, so we're going to make you a fractional person instead, because then at any one time they could say, okay, thanks, goodbye. Is that a little thing? Is that something we should be concerned about?
I'll take this one, Christine, real quick. So I would say certainly it's a show, in my humble opinion, of the fractured market for all the reasons that you've mentioned. Though I will say there is a benefit, particularly for companies who are startups. And like we chatted about before, they don't necessarily know what exactly they need. They just know that they are drowning. And so what I would say is that what I'm seeing is for those who are interested in pursuing those fractional roles, and they get it, they get that they have to market themselves as this product, as someone with a plan who comes in with this book, we're going to follow the playbook and we're going to get some things done here. I have seen a significant amount of those people that we've worked with who've achieved that kind of a role, a fractional placement with somebody. If they get the continuous marketing that they must do internally, they have often been offered long-term roles or full-time roles. So for me, it's more indicative of the market shifting and maybe some fractures there, but it's also it's in line with where I think a lot of early stage companies find themselves, which is a try before you buy mentality. And so for those who really come with the goods and who aren't just saying, hey, I'm a consultant, but I can't really tell you any of my results, for those who really do gravitate for that work and they can bring the results and they can promote themselves in that way, I do see that it can be longer term success for people. It just sort of depends on how they're wired and how they're equipped with learning how to promote themselves and to capture the wins that they deliver to a company in that amount of time. So case studies then become really important. So that's what I'm seeing. How about you, Christine?
So this is what David Solomon said: company trying to get value from the employee, partly because most people don't put in 40 hours of productive work during a week. When fractional, you're expected to get more done in a shorter time. I don't know if the panel agrees with that or not, or has any thoughts about that. I mean, it's the whole, it doesn't have to be a 9 to 5, a 40-hour week. It could be more, again, that's a whole methodology thing changing too, which is a whole, part of it as well.
I agree with both of those statements because one, going back to Linda, okay, I have a fractional role open, so therefore I created a job, so therefore that's another job to advertise on the BLS statement every month. And I look great. And two, it's, just like Claire said, walking in and get your foot in the door so that you can really show what you have so you can get that promotion if and when it is available. But three, exactly what David said too, you're kind of stuck doing more with less. You want more information, you want more closing of sales in less amount of time. So even if they are saying, hey, it's a 20, 25-hour a week gig or a contract or a fractional, whatever you would like to call it, you still have to do 40 hours worth of work in 25 hours, and they're like, well, I don't know why you can't. Well, if you can't, then there must be something wrong with you and not with their systems. So it creates a little bit of a breakdown mental health wise because you're trying and you feel like you're running in place, trying to get all of these things accomplished and ticks off of your list, and yet you can only do so much in the time that you're given.
So Jack, let me ask you a question. When you work with a company, Does the company first reach out to you and say, I have a job that I want someone to, so you to hire someone for, or do you have to be the salesperson to reach out to the company to let them know that I'm here and available for your needs? I mean, how does that process actually work?
It's a good question. It goes both ways. So on one side, you'll have this, where a company, particularly if you have a long relationship with, a number of different companies, and a job opens, they'll come and say, hey, Jack, you specialize in legal compliance, risk, anti-money laundering, and we have a job. Let's talk about it. And then they'll set up a time where it'd be usually a video, and we'll talk about the role and all that. Other times, you might have a lead that you hear this job is open at a really cool company, and a recruiter go after and say, hey, this is a really great company. I think I have good people in my network and in my database. So yeah, I'm going to go and solicit and say, hey, I see that you have a job opening, and I'd love to see if we could help recruit for it. In this current market, that's a little tougher because it's more of what I'm noticing across the board is more of a belt tightening, cost conscious environment compared to where it was. So they rather not pay a recruiter who is going to charge like 20, 25, maybe even higher percent of the base annual salary, because that's a meaningful fee. And if they could dispense with that fee, the company would be happier. So it goes in those different ways. And I think when things are hot and vibrant, the companies don't worry so much about the different placement fees. But when it's like a cost effective kind of environment, that's really important. And you've probably all seen on social media, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, lots of recruiters talking about losing their jobs, can't find another job. And this is one of the reasons why, because they don't want to pay right now, those fees.
I had 2 more of them reach out to me this week. So I have a question for you, Jack. With all these fractional roles, are outside recruiters being asked to do some of those? I know that you're doing some contract placements, but what about fractional placements?
I haven't done that. I've always been more permanent full-time. So I don't really know how that, what's going on from the recruiting in that space. But I would imagine that's going to be growing, because anything that saves money for companies, I think that's going to be a winner for these places. Anything that's going to cost money, not so good.
Yeah, we work with a lot of recruiters, as you know, particularly to position their candidates. And one of the new segments of recruiting groups that we've worked with are actual placement systems who are just focused on medical sales or biotech or pharma fractional leadership.
Really?
And yes, so one right now, everybody, if you guys want to check it out, a great one is called Biotech Exec, and that is exactly what they do. They just place people in fractional and consultative roles. Some of those roles, like we were talking about, go on to be full-time, but the entry point is contract. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely see the fractional thing coming out, because one of my cousins she was out from Salesforce for a while. So she now does fractional work as a fractional PM. She's kind of reinvented herself.
I think a big opportunity for anyone out there looking to start a business is really helping people to, and we do a little bit of this, but I would really like to see some companies emerge that do this in earnest and as a focus, is helping people who step into fractional roles to develop some of the systems that are necessary for them to manage their life and their work. Because like we're all talking about, it might be a 3-day a week work opportunity rather. But like Christine said, that 27-hour commitment is really 40 to 80 on the back end, let's be honest, because it has to be, how are they going to manage people? How are they going to manage those projects? They're also communicating. They've got to store all that and continue to market themselves so that they can fill the next financial need that they need to fill. So I'd really, I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. It's almost like, consulting agencies for helping people set themselves up in fractional labor work. So I would love to see that in the future. And you guys, I have so enjoyed being here with you today. I've got to go, but gosh, Kenneth, thanks for all you do, and it's an honor
Sure.
to chat with you all here today. Thank you so much for having me.
Right.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Yeah, see you later.
I wanted to post this up here because, and this is probably a question for Hannah and Isaacs or an employment lawyer, how it's going to redefine exempt employee classification, this whole process. I mean, I guess what I wonder about is that, and I don't know the answer to this so much, does a fractional project manager get paid by the hour? Or might it be project based? You know, maybe I'm going to agree to do X amount for X amount of dollars, in which case, you know, maybe it's a 1099 thing. And maybe there's a statement of work associated with that. You know, it's not just do the work, but there's some agreement or an RFP or something. I mean, this is kind of a new area for me, but I just wonder about that. You know, maybe it's now project based, not hourly based. And I'd be curious to get a sense from what the three of you think about that.
I think that a company is going to do whatever they need to do so it works out in their best interest. You know, they're always looking for, you know, what the pros and the cons and how they're going to benefit from that. And if that means turning their current full-time exempt employees into fractional or only hiring fractional or making them do more with less because we have to change salaries, when they're going to kind of take a look at all of that and make it work for them. So if we have new laws that are coming into play every single day, like the no compete agreements being against the law, when somebody, Congress, our lawmakers, whatever, decide to have full-time health benefits for everybody, not just those that work full-time jobs, then I think that you're going to see a lot more people be okay with the smaller jobs that are not 40 hours a week, the fractional employment, the contract employment, because a lot of people are looking for those benefits such as healthcare, 401ks, blah, 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 blah. When that becomes a universal standard, I think that the job seeker's outlook is going to look a little bit different.
I think you're right. And I am seeing fractional roles, Kenneth, that are both project-based as well as hourly-based.
Yes, me too.
So I got to ask you, Jack, the question I always ask again and again and again, which is the unrealistic job specs question. When a company sends the job specs to you and you will have to maybe push back or say that you may have someone that meets most of the criteria, but not all of it. And then how do you try to convince them that you have a good candidate, but it doesn't meet everything that they're looking for because they may not know what they're looking for and they may think they're what they're looking for? Is that still a challenge?
I think not only is it still a challenge, but I think this is where, unless something changes dramatically, we're going to see more and more companies are going to do, I think, I don't know if it was Christine you mentioned it or Claire, that these companies are going to do whatever is in their best interest, meaning pay as little as possible and try to get as much work out of someone as possible. And when it's a tighter market, it's easier for these companies to just dictate the terms, and you don't have that much flexibility. And it's, for the white collar market, it's kind of like a white collar, they call it rich session, where they're slow walking the hiring process. Think about all the layoffs in the tech sector and other sectors. You could tell, like, there's not a big appetite to say, hey, we're going to hire lots and lots of people. And to me, that's very concerning about the economy. And Christina, I'd be really curious of your take from working at the Department of Labor. Each month you'll see 200 new jobs, 200,000 new jobs, like crazy numbers. And then sometimes month after month, the same exact numbers. But then afterwards, if you ever notice, they revise it downwards. And that doesn't go out to the media. So they don't realize they're revising it downwards. What is really going on, Christine, like from your perspective, because you're an expert in this, like some of these, the jobs are real, but like they're part-time, they're contract, what's, you know,
I think
what do you
fear
think?
sells. I think overall fear sells. And to calm the masses, so to speak, the DOL is putting out that, oh, we have so many jobs were filled this month, and oh, all these new jobs, and it kind of brings up the economy and spending habits and blah blah blah. So it's all tied in with that final number. And then behind the scenes, they'll say, oh, really, it wasn't even that high. Or, oh, we thought it was going to be, 200,000 new jobs, but it really is only like 10 new jobs or whatever it happens to be. It's ridiculous. But if we at the DOL are still seeing the same amount of job seekers or more job seekers that need help, and they're trying to find whatever job they're looking for in any industry, there's obviously a problem. It's not that you've created all these jobs and they're there for the pickings. I mean, I walk through my living room and DOL, they created blah blah, and I turn the TV off immediately or switch channels because I just can't even listen to the lies.
Wow, that's so crazy. And like, I'm glad you're sharing this, and because I thought I was the only one looking and said this doesn't make sense.
Well, Jack, part of it is this, Jack, and this is an issue I've had for years and years and years. The DOL is mainly meant for blue collar workers.
Yes.
There is no white collar DOL.
I didn't know that. I didn't think. Wait, help me out with this.
Well,
I never thought of it that way.
Most of the jobs going back to 2008, 2007, 2006, they were never prepared for the white collar influx of people who lost their jobs. So they don't have the training, they don't have the mindset, they don't have the infrastructure to know how to handle that. Because over the years, most of the people who lost the jobs were not at that level.
Right.
So I've pushed for the longest time in New Jersey, have a DOL for white collar, a separate DOL for blue collar. There are different needs and different expectations. And I think that's true. What?
And then they said, oh, no, that's segregation. We can't do that. And they lumped all together. Well, Jack, if you've seen resumes, how you write a resume for an executive CEO is way different than an entry level. They're not going to look the same. They're not going to have the same information. They're not going to be, they're two different targets. And they only teach one way of job search, one way of writing a resume, one way of interviewing and answering questions, completely different from the big scope picture to the little thing. And there is a huge disconnect. Just like Ken said, it's not made for a white collar. So they're kind of on their own. It's like, all right, well, I apply for unemployment, but now what? And that's why these networking groups are so, so very important, to see what other like-minded people, other experienced rich people are doing in their job search, so you can mimic some of that depending on where you are in your career. Very important.
And the DOL, by its nature, they're not on LinkedIn. They have no presence there. They don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, years and years ago, Rich Heckelman and I went down to the DOL in Trenton. We had a whole conversation with Aaron Fichter, who was the DOL commissioner there. And they were flabbergasted at how much they needed to do.
Yeah.
Because
Christine,
because what?
Oh, I'm sorry, Christy. Can I go back to what you were saying? Because like that was really, you said it almost casual, but it's like mind blowing. So that whatever, let's put politics aside. Whoever is in, pulling the levers of control, Democrat, Republican, whatever.
Yeah.
So it sounds like what you're saying in part is that, hey, you want to show good numbers, because if you show good numbers and the media picks up on it, everybody parrots. If you ever notice, like it's the same thing, the jobs report, everyone says the same thing, every news outlet, same thing. And so it just makes everyone think, oh, this is good. Things are good. That means I could go out there and buy that new car I was thinking about.
Yes.
Oh, I can take that extra trip. Oh, we can go out for dinner because things are looking good. So it's almost like a mind effort, because like you're making people believe something is happening that may or may not be happening. And now this goes to the second thing I wanted to ask you, Linda and Christine, is it what's really going on with those numbers? Like if you turn back the curtain, are you going to, and you think of the birth death model that they use, the seasonal adjustment models that they use, all sorts of other, the household surveys that are also like, not necessarily accurate. They're based on models for the most part, right? So like, and then if you count, I'm not being cute here, homeless people, people who just gave up looking, people who are of a certain age who can't get back in because of ageism. When you really look at it, would unemployment really be like twice as much as it is now if they counted it, like
all that stuff, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
If you counted all of that stuff,
yeah,
I firmly believe it would be very close, if not on par to have. Yes.
So what do you think if they really took, okay, because if you're on the streets homeless, you don't have a job, but they don't get counted, right? If you're taking disability checks because you could and whatever, you're not counted. But if you really counted people who pretty much, like Americans who are here, would it be 7% unemployment, 8% unemployment if it was real? What do you think? And I'm just throwing out a number. I have zero,
I don't know. Linda, do you have any guesses?
My guess is that 7 or 8% is probably low.
Really?
So if you're thinking about it,
Wow.
Illinois right now unemployment is about 3.94%.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's only the people who are collecting unemployment. It doesn't count those people whose unemployment has run out. And the time to find a job for many people is longer than 6 months that the unemployment runs. Not
That's
only
starting
that,
on day one, Lynn. Just like you said, day one. Yep.
exactly. Not only that, the unemployment numbers or the real employment numbers don't count those people who are marginally employed or underemployed.
I would even go one step further. Even the categories that they define the people in are so outdated.
Absolutely.
Wait, when you say underemployed, how is that counted somehow in the
No, it's not. If you're bringing in a paycheck, okay, you're paying taxes on it of some sort, you count as being employed from the DOL's kind of standpoint. But you're really not. You're not making a living wage. You're doing what I call a survival job. Okay.
Which you're barely surviving at. Yes.
Exactly. Right. In many cases, you're really not. You need extra assistance. You can't survive. So you're doing 2 or 3 of those jobs, but you're not doing the work for either which you were trained or for which you have the experience and that you could be doing.
I also think, and Christine and I have had this conversation before, the DOL is not in the process of their goal is not to get people to work.
No.
Their goal is to get the statistics and report the statistics out. It's not, I don't want to say it's not in their best interest, but that's what they do. Now, underemployed, recently graduated, can't find work. I think there are so many more people that are underemployed, and even those that just get out of school, it's very hard to get started. I mean, we talk about ageism, it cuts both ways. Ageism for young, ageism for old. And I think we have to get past the stats that are there because they're not realistic. No. There's little that they, how do you feel about government? There's little that they can do because they don't know how to do it. And that's why we have these networking groups, we have these events, because that's the best way to go about it. I mean, I met all of you online. I mean, I think Christine and Jack, I met you at the Breakfast Club, but it was like going out there and having conversations, and you don't know where it's going to go. And I think that is such a huge part of looking for a job is networking and putting yourself out there. I mean, Jack, you could get a resume, you get 50 resumes that are all great, but then how are you going to really determine who's the best one and what's the right fit? I mean, it's a numbers game, and none of us really have the answer per se. But maybe it's about following up. Maybe it's about letting people know you're interested. I don't have the answer per se. I just love to have a conversation about this.
I always tell people that no matter what event you attend, whatever your interest is, whether it is in your interest or not, if you learned one thing that you can take with you and incorporate it into whatever you're currently doing, then you struck gold. If you learn more than that, 2, 3, wow, you better go again and again and get to know everybody. But that's should be your goal, just to learn one thing that you were not already doing, and then be able to incorporate and move it forward and see if it's working for you, if it doesn't work for you, and just get to know everybody, what they're doing, because 9 times out of 10, not all the time, but there's going to be other people with like minds that are listening as well, and picking other people's brains is huge.
I mean, in an ideal situation, in my pie in the sky dream, I would love to see some sort of an incubator for, let's say, white collar workers where they could go and network in. one location, as opposed to having to do this online. Maybe it becomes a function of a DOL white collar, where you go there and it's not just about, well, here's your resume, I'm going to put it in the system. And here's the jobs I'm going to send back, which are off a job board. I mean, I don't really know how the structure would be. And then you can make that national, international, because people in white collar have a different way of looking for a job than people in blue collar. They don't need to do some of the steps. They need help in a different way.
Yes.
They don't, the whole idea of unemployment. And again, maybe this is New Jersey. You got to call up Monday through Friday, this time to that time, and only on Saturday, and you can't go online other times, and the system is down, et cetera, et cetera. Who needs it? So I mean, Jack, this may be eye-opening to you to understand how the process works. I don't know if it is or not, but we all kind of lived this process when we were out of work too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yes. But I also think that once you do land, it makes you a little bit more appreciative of the fact that you have a job.
Except for the fact that people have
to leap somewhere else, because you know what could be on the other side. You know what else is out there and how that will affect you. So I don't think that people are necessarily on board for jumping ship to go to a different place as they maybe once were. It's totally not like that. So.
And I'm seeing the opposite, Christine. I'm seeing people saying the job market is so unstable. You never know when this job is going away.
Right. Yeah.
And especially if I think I'm underemployed or I'm not being paid what I think I should have been, because people are taking jobs at salaries that are lower than they used to have, because that's just the way the job market is right now.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm hearing more about always be looking, and
Yes.
that whole idea of it's not a forever job, it's a next forever job.
Well,
That's
people have actually asked me, is it okay to mention I'm looking for a job if I have a job? Because I get that a lot from off to the side.
Yeah.
And I say, why not? You're always going to be looking for your next opportunity. And if you have no idea if your boss isn't looking for his next opportunity. I mean, but that's a question I get again and again, whether it's the open to work thing or not. You're always looking for something. And I think what I've loved about the last 200 shows or stuff is just brainstorming with other people, because I don't claim to know everything. And that's why I want experts like you guys on the call, because I think the more we learn from each other, the better. I mean, we can't change the whole job search process. I mean, ideally, I wish we could. And AI is going to have a big role in this. But understanding what the process is kind of helps us help others. So in your case, Jack, I mean, we've had a lot of discussions about this, from recruiter to one side. And you and I both kind of have the Don Quixote mindset about different things. And I'm sure you and Linda and Christine do. It's what can we do to really help people,
Right.
Manage things. And, we each do what we can.
Exactly.
So what is your take, Jack? I mean, we're kind of in a little different space than you. I mean, do you find too many people applying for jobs that don't have the qualifications because they need a job? Is that kind of affecting you, or is it not that way?
I think we're in a very tough spot. We have these macro global events that are going on. You worry about an escalation of war in the Middle East. You're worried about what's going to happen with Ukraine. You have to worry about, maybe is China going to take over Taiwan? We can go on. You have high inflation that's still sticky. You have the costs are high. Let's be frank. You go anywhere, fill up for gas. You go for just to a diner to eat, and it's you look at the check and it's like, this is nuts. You go grocery shopping, it's crazy. So where and this is why I was so curious about speaking, Linda, hearing from you and Christine about what goes on behind the scenes, because what's going on in the reality of every American's life is very different than the touting of like, hey, everything is great. Look at all these jobs that are being created, and it's a mismatch. So what ends up happening for, let's say, the college grads, and I can tell this from firsthand experience, for my kids and their friends, it is like brutal to get a job, even if they went to a good school and spent a whole lot of money or their parents' money, and then they're just either working at Starbucks or just doing some other job, way, as you said, Linda, very much completely underemployed and just hoping something will change. But I think it's not going to change. And I hate to be a doomer, but like, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon because the economy is still very tenuous. And companies are just trying to cut back as much as possible because they're not confident about what's going to happen next. And when it's that scenario, no matter how much all of us talk to job seekers or what have you, a lot of it is out of control because if they're not going to hire or they're going to just take their sweet time or they're going to try to lowball, a lot of times we're powerless against that really because they're calling the shots. They could just say, hey, you know what? We're not going to hire. We're going to make the people work harder and longer hours. And I think, Linda, you were like alluding to that. So they're going to just keep those people and they're going to hunker down and not complain or say anything because they want to keep their job because they know if they don't have a job, it's going to be really hard to get a new one. And we're in a really weird space now. And unfortunately, we don't talk about this. The media doesn't talk about it at all, which makes it more problematic because if the media, instead of saying, look at these great numbers, everything is wonderful, you don't have to say everything is bad, but you say, wait, here's some of the fissures, here's some of the issues, here's some of the problems. At least the psyche of most people make them feel a little better that it's like when they go home and speak to their spouse, their partner, their family, they could say, oh, it's not me. This is what's really going on. It is a tougher economy and being honest with us so you don't feel bad or as bad. So right now, it's just, it's an unfortunate spot that we're in. And we're like pretending everything is great and they're not. Think about it. Credit card debt is through the roof. People are dipping into their 401ks and their retirement plans. It's not, people can't afford homes. Think about it. You know, young people, there's like zero way they're going to live better than their parents the way things are going. It's going to be the first time in modern history where the younger generation is looking at the older and say, I can't, how can I afford a house? How can I afford to have kids? How can I afford to start a family? And it's very frightening to me.
And I think a lot of it also.
You're saying all that, Jack, because I read multiple articles. I would say at least 7 articles this morning saying the exact same thing that you have just stated verbally. And we're talking about companies' viewpoints versus the economy and inflation rates versus graduates and what they think of the job market. And all of those things that you just mentioned are printed today. So I don't know if they're just getting on board or if it's going to be a hush-hush thing and it's going to be, oh, something better will come along tomorrow and the sun's going to come out. And I really don't know where it's taking us, you know.
This is true. Family and friends don't understand the difficulty of the unemployed. That's a big part of it. I mean, I used to get this every day. What's going on today? How many jobs have you applied to? What's going on with your resume? And it's well-meaning. Don't misunderstand. I think, but sometimes it's a level set, and they don't realize how long the process takes. I mean, all of us have kind of been in that place, so it helps a little bit. What's going to happen in the next few months is you're going to hear all about the hospitality jobs coming up for the hotels and the theme parks, and everyone's going to go to the theme parks. And those are jobs that are being created, but still, what is, See,
Ken, you raised such an interesting point there because I like the direction you're heading is that, well, you could get all these summertime jobs, right? All these spring and summertime jobs.
Right.
So for the person who's in between roles, their family, friends, relatives are going to be, how come you can't get a job? What's wrong with you? Look at all these jobs. And then you have to start explaining, well, these jobs are in the leisure area in hotels and I have a, degree in blah, blah, blah. So like, that's not my thing. And so you're left feeling like people looking at you like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get that job? But you want to shout out like, no, it's not like, I don't want to work as a bartender. I spent $100,000 for a college degree in whatever it is you did. And I shouldn't have to.
What you're saying is the person that's criticizing that job seeker that's listening to the TV saying the DOL just created 200,000 jobs.
Yes.
And they're looking at the job saying, well, why can't you get a job?
Exactly.
All these jobs are out there. They don't know what it's like to be a job seeker and struggle on a daily basis. And you have a huge disconnect, but the person criticizing usually doesn't even want to come meet that person in the middle to say, okay, how can I support you?
And think about this too. How many videos have you guys seen on TikTok or X where Gen Zs are just literally crying? Now, like I'm sure some of them are just hyping it up to get clicks, but crying like how can I survive? I'm getting up early, super early in the morning, have to commute into the city. I don't have really the money to go back and forth. I get home, I'm exhausted. I try to get groceries, pay rent, pay my phone bills, pay this. I don't even have enough money, and I'm working hard.
Right.
And
it's not just the people in that age range. It's a lot of people, all ages. That's part of that idea of being either underemployed or underpaid. People just can't afford it because of the way the companies are paying. And one of the other things that I wanted to bring out real quick was the fact that the same way we talked about the unemployment numbers not being realistic, those numbers about what kinds of jobs are being opened, the number of jobs that are new, unless you do a deep dive into the numbers to see that they're hospitality or to see that they're retail, okay, not the jobs you're looking for, it's totally unrealistic to say that there are X number of new jobs created. And people say, well, why can't you get one? Because it's not in my area. It's not my field.
Right. And they usually have this like metric, like 2 jobs for every 1 person, 3 jobs over 1 person, but they don't give the like asterisk. Well, yes, if you're in the food services business, or if you're in, right.
And one more thing that people don't understand, sure, can you get one of those jobs? Maybe you can try if you need to, but a lot of companies aren't interested in hiring you if you are that accounting manager, that IT manager, that high-level salesperson.
And why is that?
Right?
Why is that?
You're overemployed. You're more expensive. You're overqualified. You're not going to stay, right? All of that kind of stuff. I can hire somebody who's so much cheaper. You won't do it. So why should I hire you?
Yes.
So it's like you're getting squeezed from both ends.
Yes. Yes. And you know what? I actually believe that there are people on camera crying. Like there's people that have been, brought to tears over, I don't know which way to turn. I don't know where to go. I am trying this and I'm trying that. And the frustration is mounting because they don't have that support. They truly don't know where to go, and they're losing it. They're crying because they have nothing else that they could do.
Right.
What I want to mention right off the bat is I'm going to get back to all these comments, and I will, comment on the post later on the feed, because I see this is kind of blowing up. So it's not that I'm ignoring you guys. I want to make sure that, we touch as much of the topic as possible. I love getting the perspectives from everyone here, because I think in many cases we don't realize what the statistics mean. It's not just a number, it's what's behind the number. When you talk about, again, people that have applied for a job is not the same as people that have viewed a job, people that have gotten through the whole ATS thing. I mean, this is an AI nightmare, which we have very little control over except to try to understand it. I don't think, and this is as political as I'm going to get, I don't think politicians in their nature really understand this problem. I think they're just driven by statistics. There are no people there that really have a handle on this. For whatever reason, whether you want to say it's finances or stock, they just don't know. And it doesn't look good to say. I mean, you've created a lot of jobs, congratulations. But if they're in fast food and they're in hospitality and they're not paying that much, so what to most people? Right. Now, that's not everyone. That's why I go back to, you need a white collar system to actually flesh this out. That's where I would love to see a grant or something, a white collar system.
Jobs are important. I think that they are absolutely needed. Those positions, the people that are working in them day to day and sweating, blood, sweat, and tears, they are needed. However, we have this whole other side that are not getting the help and the attention that they need and deserve, as Ken said. And so where does that leave them? Where does that leave us?
I read something about another country that when people want to make a career change, they offer the person a year's compensation while they do that career change.
Wow.
It's sort of like a an internship. You agree to do that, so they actually pay you whatever the amount is for that year while you're retraining. Now, I don't know if that's feasible in this country. I think it was a small country, but I found that very interesting. I'm going to make a career change, so I'm going to pay you a stipend, and maybe you have to agree to do certain things, whether it's classes or things. But I would wonder about that too. I mean, again, as I agree with Nicholas here, the traditional job search model is gone, and we must now adapt to the new rules of the game. The problem is those rules keep changing.
And nobody shares what they are.
Yeah. You have to guess.
So I want to thank you, Linda, Jack, and Christine, for joining my last official LinkedIn Live. I'll be back doing many other events. All of you guys who have attended over the years, I appreciate you so much. I should probably go back and do a Saturday Night Live thing. Who's been on most of my events? Maybe give them things like the 5 and the 4 and the 3 and all that stuff. But I wish you all a great day. Jack, Linda, Christine, and Claire, thank you very much.
Wait, before we sign off, can we acknowledge one thing?
Absolutely.
Look how fit you look.
Yeah.
Wow, right? Like, if you've been working out, running,
that's not by choice.
Oh, okay. Oops. All right.
That's not by choice.
Are you okay? Everything all right?
What?
Everything okay, or?
Everything's getting okay.
Okay.
I mean,
I didn't know that, so I just you look trim. You look really nice and trim.
That's the positive of this. That's totally the positive. I'm in a better place than I was 2 months ago. But to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I wound this down, because it was taking a toll on me.
Yeah.
And there were times I wasn't sure I could actually make an event, and it was easier that way. So I'm going to keep doing them, but I just feel it's easier if I kind of take a step back a little bit. So I'm going to be doing monthly events. I'm going to be attending Linda's events. I'm going to be attending Christine's, and Jack, you invite me, and Brenda, because I think it's so important for us to share our knowledge with everyone. And
I think that's a smart move for you. Good for you. A lot of people would have kept pushing it until the breaking point. No. So good for you for being smart.
This is like Michael Jordan retiring at the top of his game.
Love it. So let's talk about the top of the game for a moment and acknowledge the fact that you've done 200.
Right. That is awesome. That is crazy. That's amazing.
Well, it started out with 5 or 6 people on a Zoom call in northern New Jersey. We figured we'd have a chat during the pandemic. Let's see who shows up. And then we said, let's just do it again. And then I said, let's get people on the call who are out of work to do presentations. Let them practice their presentations. We're not going to bite, and it just worked out from there. And then again, it's a word of mouth thing. And then I met so many great people over the years. And I say this story all the time. I was scared to death to connect with some people because I thought they'd say no.
So was I.
I know. It's like, they're not going to want to reach out to me. Yeah. Same with you, Linda. I mean, hey, I didn't know you.
We know.
Yeah.
And you helped a lot of people. That's great.
I'd like to think that, but even if it's just my knowledge, that's the most important thing is sharing the knowledge and the transparency for sure. So, I mean, my next event is actually going to be on May 7th. We're doing it next Tuesday evening. It's going to be for college students and those that are looking to get a job starting out. I have Mark Beal, who has written books about it. I have Debbie from William Patterson Pesce Institute, Debbie Feingold, and we're going to talk about the challenges that students have with getting a job. And that's going to be a very important thing just to learn from them, to find out. And I'm actually looking on a Saturday morning to invite some kids on a call. So hint, Christine, some kids to talk about job search. Let's have a job search conversation from their perspective. Instead of me preaching to them, let them talk to us.
Oh, I like that.
So spread the word, because it's going to be a Saturday morning, so there's nothing else going on except maybe sports games and things. Let's just have a different conversation.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to be focused more on less but better, hopefully. So again,
there you go.
Thank you very much. I
Thanks.
mean, I'm going to be out and around, just not here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock, but I'm going to actually be repurposing my content for podcasts and things. That's probably my next challenge, is to go through all that content. So thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, too. Congratulations, Kenneth.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Okay, that was great, actually. So that was great, Jack.
That's good, right?
Yeah,
this is a good conversation. This is
I
awesome.
really like that, too.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're connected, Jack, but we need to be.
Sure,
Well,
absolutely.
Jack has done a whole thing with WeWork, kind of a similar thing to me, like trying to put people back to work.
Mhm.
It's a passion project of things. And I have my networking central. We're all trying to brainstorm to figure out the best way to do things.
I know.
I mean, there's a strength in numbers, and this has been the greatest part, is introducing people to each other, which is kind of how I got to know you through Brenda and Jack.
Exactly.
Now, Linda, what do you focus on? Like, what's your
So, a job search strategist, job search coach, working with people to repurpose their careers to some extent, highlight their